Hey Slim, what's the deal, baby?
Making this money.
You bet, check this out. It's going down over on the south. Somebody come over there on the north. Yo, we gotta put it down. Boys ain't feel us in 9-9 with that brave fade. It's Y2K, baby. Know I'm talking about? Candy coated, still put it down. Still swinging and banging, huh? Boys gon' feel us, man. Boys gon' feel us. What?
Alright, what's good everybody? So today I'm going to be talking about something that's a lot more closely personal to me. Not personal like I'm going to show you guys what I do from my outside day-to-day life, but I mean like I'm going to be talking about my own experiences with playing the game in the realms of like ranks, some of the offline scene, things I kind of like, things that just went on here and there as I improved like over time from like the past 2 years. And I wanted to give you guys something that you'll be able to grasp onto to kind of help you understand what the journey actually looks like and stuff. Give me a sec. All right, I had to make sure I was recording at the time because like I failed this twice already. It's always some bullshit, but I'm gonna be helping you guys by just making you go through like discussing like, you know, where I started and stuff, and go through like my history of like improvement, where I was mentally and what my experiences were even before like the game release. So stick around for that. Alright, so right around here is actually, it should cover between like, if I remember how the phases went by then, like this was from launch all the way up to I believe September or before MR was ever introduced. I don't know if MR was introduced phase 1, but I do remember this was at least around like between launch, which would be June, all the way up to like August or September possibly, because I remember playing Rashid at the time, and I remember both Ryu and Ken. Ryu was my main at the time, but he was not half the character that he is now. And those that have stuck around this character for a long time, maybe even since launch, like y'all know like what this man used to be. And Ken was already considered to be like one of the best at the time, and JP and Luke were on that list too. Rashid was a character that we have not yet seen develop like right away. Like he's still considered to be one of the more technical characters in this game, but this would actually be my character of choice that I would run into in bracket to my first, maybe not my first ever local, but definitely my first one ever back into the scene. One that really like jet skied my journey into the offline scene that I've yet to have ever see, despite me being around like or invested in the field of like fighting games for like more than a decade at that point. And I would come out third with Rashid at my first ever local scene then. I was pretty happy with that, honestly. But I should mention that this was also me coming off of like a 5-year like sweat fest of me playing Dragon Ball FighterZ, which at this point I was really drained from like that whole experience. Like even by the end of it, I was really like wanting to play like something new. Just to have something like fresh and stuff, because it's a lot to play a game for 5 years, and I was really burnt out by the end. And I mentioned that because it means a lot for the upcoming future from that time. So eventually, not this again. Eventually, I would climb up. I would start to show like I was not just like new to fighting games and stuff. And I actually ranked up to master like pretty quickly shortly after the first phase. I don't think MR was introduced at this point, but I'll go in a sec to like see what it's really all about. Stuck around with Rashid, Ryu a bit, The other three down here were not really characters I cared to like invest time in depth with the intention to like take to bracket or be at a high level with them. Like they were just there around for fun and stuff. Eventually, from that phase, I would take these two all the way up to like master, because I started to become more fundamentally sound with Street Fighter as a game. Because coming from a tag fighter, there are just some things that you have to learn to like adjust to, because you're not gonna be able to like shoot like key blast from full screen, at least not in the way like that most tag fighters do. There's no full beam like projectiles, there's no like flying, teleporting shit like that. None of that exists, right? So it was a lot to have to adjust to, but I'll get into that once I go through this. DJ also was just another character that I kind of had hopes for, but in the end, like, we know who stuck around and stuff. And then from this phase on, that's where I actually, from this point, we can actually get to the MR to really kind of reflect on a few things. Like, oh no, that's win percentage. There it is. Master rate 1. 14-4. So I was in master, but I wasn't like anybody like I wasn't killing it in the high level scene at the time. Like I mentioned, like Street Fighter was not a game that I've learned to play at a much higher level. I was familiar with Street Fighter. I knew my first fighting game was Street Fighter. And it was the game that introduced me to the whole like FGC competitive scene and stuff. It was 4 and stuff, but in between this game and 4, I have not touched any other Street Fighter unless it was like me playing on Fightcade with 3, and for the most part, I spent most of my time playing like Marvel vs. Capcom. Also, why do I keep doing that? So eventually, I would kind of like over time increasingly like refine myself, but at this point, I would still consider, in my perception, people kind of debate over when does high-level Street Fighter really start, at what MR range and stuff. And even then, like, you have to understand, like, the region that you're from here and there, but that's all way too much that I don't think any of us really care to discuss anymore. And then from this cutoff on phase 3, that's where I would jump into PC, because this was my PlayStation account, so stick around, let me make the moves there. Alright, so back here and stuff, as we can see, like I just did my thing and got everybody back up to where I was, Luke included, but I try to ignore like these two because they're kind of for casual fun. Ryu I always kept on the side because I knew one day he was about to blow up, and my assumptions were right as to today. And moving on from that, right? From this point on, and honestly, like, even in between then, like, I was still kind of in my head debating how far I really wanted to, like, take things. And even up till now, it's always still in the back of my head, even though I've come to, like, a more, like, conclusive decision on how I view things and, where I stand and where I want to take things from here on. But from here then, even though I was still heading out to like the offline scene too, two of our biggest locals around in my area were still here up to like, maybe not this point. It was still they were here up to this point, but recently, as of like last year, like the end of last year, they both had shut down, which was it killed like the offline scene around here, honestly. Like, there are a few things opened up, but if they're not like monthlies or bi-monthlies, like they are either like an hour or two away from most people, which it's rough at the moment out here. And then like this was where I started to like clean myself a bit, like fundamentally and stuff. But what I really want to kind of dive in more depth was kind of like where my head was with everything. Because Street Fighter itself is not a game that I don't understand. Like, well, there's not really much that you have to really study up on too much with this game, because understanding like the frame data, the numbers, knowing that each character has like 6 normals, 3 to 4 special moves, like all of that is actually relatively fast to understand versus a game like Tekken where they have so many command normals here and there. There's not really as much depth to that in that regard mechanically. It really comes down to like when you come to actually work on your neutral, your footsies, offense, defense here and there, that you have that starts to develop more and what brings you up to like a higher level. And at this point I was still relatively moving up a bit more, but learning how to play this game as I progressively got much higher and higher in skill, like it started to become a lot more rigid and a lot tougher to do, because Street Fighter is not a game that I am naturally, I'd say, good at with natural talent, versus a tag fighter like Dragon Ball where things kind of clicked on immediately. I understood most of the things at heart because of how my head naturally works in that space. Street Fighter has qualities and aspect to it that work the complete opposite way. And it's something that I've had to struggle with the most, but at the same time, what kept me going was I saw the reward in having my head adapt to think a certain way that I knew could be used in other areas. And that is something that kept me going, but never it was in my mind that I one day was going to be at like a Punk MNRD type level. That headspace completely got left behind with Dragon Ball, to be honest. And eventually, but I still would move up eventually, like climb up to like 1700 during this phase. It was this phase that I first hit that, but there was no title at the time. So at this point, you'll just see the number, but not the rank titles and stuff. And the only reason why I'm 1600 is because I did end off on like a losing streak there. So, but it was around this time where I first hit 1700 for the first time. And I would stay here just to use the actual MR as like a power level scaling, even though I'll discuss why that's bullshit. At this point, I was kind of hitting my own like little stop at an intersection and debating like what direction I wanted to head towards, if I was to even make the decision that yes, I do want to head further up or further into whatever. It was always a question of, okay, now with who and why? Because it's based off some of the things I just mentioned too, like understanding that this game is not really my natural field, and also just kind of being burnt out. This is where the Dragon Ball thing comes back to. Like, I've been burnt out so much by playing Dragon Ball for the past like 5-6 years at that point that I was barely hanging on, honestly. But there was something that kind of sparked back up that had me like that kept me going and stuff, and it was like the newest fighting game at the time, and I do like 6, like there's those aspects to it and stuff, but the weight of like everything that I already went through beforehand definitely had taken their toll on me and stuff. And if it wasn't for that, I feel like I would have already hit a certain point that where I'm at now much earlier. But there was also the question of like, you know, there were just other things I had involved in stuff that also had to be like prioritized over this. But that's not to really make an excuse for myself. It's more so just to get y'all guys to understand that yes, like things outside of your life and other things aside from you actually like going in training mode can affect like, you know, where you are in your progress with the game as like real life takes over at times. And also sometimes we're just not up for it like we want to think we are, what we want to be. Like it some things are just not in you, and if they're not in you, like don't bother pretending that it is in you and stuff, because I truly don't, and I voice it all the time. But I will voice when I do make progress and stuff, because it's always good to like, you know, celebrate your own little small victories here and there and still improve and move up in a steady pace, like, because that's just how life works at the end of the day. You can't just completely be still with everything. You die. And I would still maintain this position for quite a while just to use these numbers as a scale and stuff, but eventually I kind of did push things up a bit further. But the only reason why I'm using these specific numbers in particular is because like it's to reflect that around this time also my headspace was more around like wanting to kind of settle in as far as like the area that I was like in skill wise, to have a foundation that's more grounded so that I knew like I could always come back to like, you know, this certain level of ability and make it natural secondhand nature to me, because it's something that I actually mentioned beforehand too when it came to like ranking up. Like it's more than just about hitting the number the first time you ever hit ranked, and also just quitting ranked at that moment too. It's also about like being able to maintain such a position and stuff, and being able to, you know, come back in and, you know, pull back that same bag of tricks that you have and stuff, the same tools that you have. It's forever within you, keeping you at a certain baseline. Your baseline has to be reflective of where you've last landed. So this right here, this 1700, like for example, this right here, hitting 1700 at that point was my baseline. And even between then, like I did have games here that actually landed me higher than just the tip of like where 1700 started. Well, obviously I wasn't there at the point to really progress further up. And that's where I came into like the last phase, to where I decided, okay, let's see what happens if I do try to push things further. And it got to a period that I mentioned before, which I ended up making it a lot more personal than I normally would. And I didn't understand at the moment why, when I did take a step back and to really assess, okay, why is this starting to mean a bit more to me now? Because I already been in my head about like, you know, what I kind of want out of this game, and it wasn't entirely clear what it exactly was, but I was able to confirm that, you know, I didn't necessarily care to be the top or the best and stuff. It's still like, I'm being honest when I say that, truly. But at the same time, I wasn't ready to let myself like go entirely and just phase out, because I do like playing Six, as I mentioned, and it's been fun like to come out in the offline scene too, to like play games with some of the local people that have been around longer than I have, and to like and I have placed like high in these brackets and stuff. As far as like on the regional level and stuff, like there's plenty of like second place finishes that I've won one at least, and also my average still is like within like top 5. So it's not like I was going in 0-2 also. Like I did have a place in the offline scene too. And just, you know, the natural sense of competition, like the adrenaline that you get out of it. Most people know what I'm talking about, especially in this field. You just get addicted to it sometimes. But I had a debate whether or not it was necessary or okay to continue that. And I decided to take a step back and kind of see how I was going to be online if I were to take things further. And through some trial and error and like a few sessions where I had to really make adjustments to like how I actually like played in ways that I've never had to do in a game like Dragon Ball. And I won't say that there was ego checking, because I don't really like to run these sessions too much with my own ego involved. However, I was forced to really be challenged on some of the things that I had come to believe and rely on for so long that it definitely was an uncomfortable experience. Already in the game that I was not really familiar with at a high level. So it definitely, that's at that point, that's kind of what I'm realizing now, kind of made it a lot more personal than it needed to be. Which I'm not going to say I made it my life's mission to end off here. Like, no, it's not that. But I definitely had my sights on it. Like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely gonna hit this point and like, you know, prove myself to myself or some shit. It really isn't that deep, but it wasn't like some sense of it didn't exist either. I'll be honest with y'all. And I eventually would hit up to here, right? But by then it didn't, like, seeing this title didn't exactly fill me up with the joy that I thought it was gonna feel like it was gonna fill me up with. Well, actually, I knew it wasn't. As weird as it sounds, like to me, it sounds weird to even say that because I don't get it. I don't put my own self-worth on it, but it was mostly because of some of the things I had kind of realized through the process of hitting or reaching up to here and stuff. Because my experiences, as far as like in between moving from Grands to Ultimate in the ranked sessions, like as I mentioned, I was having to go through like making adjustments and challenging some of my own like small little beliefs that I had come to rely on for years, that actually got me up to where I was in Dragon Ball, as far as like the level of like skill that I was in that game. And it's not, like I said, making that kind of adjustment is not the easiest thing to do in the world, but it is a necessary one that you have to make. You have to have the ability to challenge some of your own ideas and beliefs so that you can discard what does not serve you anymore and make room for new things to come in that'll push you even further beyond. Which, honestly, thinking about it now, really can get your ego involved in it, because your ego develops from some of your own, like your own beliefs and ideals and stuff and principles. But like all things in life, eventually, like those things have to change too, and we, change, adapt to a new person every like couple periods in our life. And nothing like this alone right here can't really describe like the experiences I had in between from this transition to this, as far as like with Ken and stuff. And I'll discuss why, which actually will lead into one of the things that I had said before, that this alone and this number does not mean shit. Like I still don't think I'm anywhere like near like a really like savage competitive player, because I've hit like this rank and stuff. Like I like it just doesn't mean shit, because there'd be times where I would play players that are above me. Sometimes I would actually smoke them, and then I would find players that are like ranked much further below me, and they would smoke me. And also just kind of understanding how sometimes like based on the region that we're in, like the numbers can be much more inflated for their favor and much less for other individuals. Things here and there, like it's just impossible to really like gauge truly 100% what a player is really packing in their skill level based off these numbers and stuff. In fact, I'm pretty sure like the average player in the US is like supposed to be 200 MR less than what a Japanese player would be, which would be this number right here. So that's also why I know better than to see this number and automatically assume I already know how good my opponent is and stuff. And I don't even think this is a reflection of, you know, where I stand. Do I think I'm worser than it? Do I think I'm better than it? I couldn't tell you. I've beaten people that are like a couple hundred like higher than this, but I've also still been smoked by them too. And I've, like I mentioned, the same way goes around this too. Like couple 100 points below me, I beat them. Couple 100 below me, sometimes they beat me. So, but I still kind of it still served as something to kind of like aim for, to like, I guess, have as a goalpost to see, just to kind of challenge myself to see if I was able to do it and stuff, to know that I wasn't, or to kind of confirm whether or not like if I was kind of just being lazy, or whether or not I truly did not have what it took. And it made me realize a few things about everything that I went through. A lot of what I said from the start was very much true. Half the time I really just don't give a fuck, to be honest. I like, people that know me really know I'm usually a dude that's, I really don't give a fuck. But that's not to say I don't enjoy playing the game and have like intention when I come in and, you know, spend time actually, you know, playing the game and learning how my own character moves and works, and like how to beat certain characters. But it's just not at the same momentum and level that I feel like I could be, which may all sound like an excuse, but it's just how it was, honestly. There's no excuse to it. Like I already said that I don't think I'm shit because I have this. There are still a couple thousand more players that are at this level, and like I said, even then, like some of those players on a very surface level of things aren't even reflecting like their number And sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. And the same goes at the bottom too. But my entire intention is to kind of have you guys see that over time, like, it took time to kind of like work up to here, and to kind of finally see things that for how they are, to understand like, okay, like, it's more than just about like the rank and stuff, you know. That's why some players don't even play rank. Like, fucking if any of you in the East Coast scene like know who players like Azan is. Like, Azan is a Jamie who's like a Diamond 5, but he's always averaging like some kind of like top 10 placement in like the TNS tournaments. And the highest I placed in like TNS was like 97 or some shit long ago. Like, I don't think, not to like could ever, like, I don't think it's impossible, but I don't have an intention to get up to where he is, to where I'm like facing Punk, Knuckle Dew, Flux Waves, those guys, 801, like on a weekly basis. Like, that just doesn't appeal to me. But in that time, I did get something out of playing the game and stuff, you know. Like, as I mentioned, like, there are things that this game allowed me to have a platform in to develop certain skills and stuff, and to really highlight what it took to like make the jumps from where I was before all the way up to here. It really took an approach to where I had to find a lot more grounding within like myself, a lot more grounding, being able to play at a pace to where I'm not openly free to like run around and stuff, and there's a lot less room to kind of like make some of the more smaller mistakes. Because I mean, I won't say that is all necessarily true, because every game eventually reaches a point to where like the smallest mistake that you do eventually like leads to your downfall. That's true even for a game like Dragon Ball, but in most tag fighters like Dragon Ball and Marvel vs. Capcom, you have a lot more things to kind of micromanage that are not really necessarily needing as much mental stack to perform well with. Like, you have to, you do think about things such as like assists here and there, like what supers they have and stuff, how many characters are on your enemy's team, what kind of assists they have at disposal at the moment, things like that here and there you think about. But to me, it's just not as mentally stacking as like a game like Street Fighter 6, to where like you know, you have to think about like spacing and stuff. Like, spacing is a lot more prevalent in this game because, you know, you whiff punish something and you get blown up for it, that can lead to like 60% damage, and it's much scarier when you to even move in offense because like of perfect parry and stuff, and just a lot of the jank that some of the characters have, like it puts a lot on your mind. I'll say that. I could go on individually for days about this game, but the root of it all, it just like comes down to this game allowing very little room to have like stability. And the biggest culprits to me, if I were to name some, is the fact that you can't block infinitely, because if you get put into burnout, you are then punished for it by having the opponent be able to employ more plus frames on their end. And if you're DI'd in the corner with nothing at your disposal, like you're put in the stun and they get a free combo, and like I mentioned, 60% with all your resources easily. That is a lot. And it can be scary. That's why you see people sit down and they take the throws, and they take the throws, and they take the throws, because just one shimmy from and they see the whiff throw, you lose the game, bro. You lose the game. It's a lot. It's a lot. And honestly, to anybody who even like manages to pull through like and win on a consistent basis with the game, I have nothing but respect for y'all. Like, because this game is not at all like friendly to the mind. So I say that all to say, like, that's kind of been like my own little journey with the game and stuff. It did make me more like sound as far as like being more conscious with like my own decision making, because of the fact that they hold a lot more weight in this game. When you do like whiff a button here and there, because getting hit with a big combo in like a tag fighter doesn't mean much compared to this, when you're only playing one character, and it's relatively easy to play. There's things like perfect parry and burnout that can kind of makes it hard for you to get back some of your own momentum and stuff. And in defense is definitely not rewarded. You're actually more punished for playing in a defensive style because of the fact that you have limited meter and can get put in the burnout for blocking too much. And we know with a game like Dragon Ball, like, you can block damn near infinitely if you're like Goichi. So it's something that I had to really like come to accept Street Fighter 6 for what it is for. And I'm gonna be honest, like, it's actually kind of made me a lot more better as a player because of it, because of having to find some form of like stability within a very unstable game. It does a lot to you, honestly. And even though I had said I don't plan to push things further as far as this, that doesn't mean I'm not gonna play the game. Like, I just know I don't have to care about this anymore. Well, I mean, I really didn't care that much to it. Like, I said, like, no ambitions for Legend. I don't give a fuck about Legend. Let's say I had the ability to get up there. Like, I probably won't feel shit, honestly. I'm gonna be honest. I'm being 100% honest. Like, seeing this hit was not really anything like fulfilling. I was more fulfilled by the aspect that, okay, finally I can, like, not worry about it anymore. Like a relief, like, oh, okay, I can finally ignore it. Cause I did want the title and stuff. It's cool to have, but I know I ain't shit for it. Like, I go into bracket. I'm not gonna beat Blas. I'm not gonna beat Punk. I'm not gonna beat Kakeru or Mena and shit. It is what it is. But what I do know what matters is like working on my own stuff, working on my actual tools, skill sets here and there, and that's where I move on to like things. This is where I'm going to be moving on to kind of like my own little diagram of sorts of things. Let me show y'all what I mean and stuff. Oh, okay. Actually, yeah. We're moving too far ahead, but let's say, for example, you are starting out with playing Street Fighter, because that's where I was at that point, where you saw me at Platinum like 3 or some shit. and you have no idea what exactly you want to do. That's exactly where, not exactly where I was, because I did have a foundation at start with Street Fighter 4, so I understood like what a quarter circle was. I knew how to do FA DC combos, even if they weren't in 6. I knew how to do some of the more complex stuff in a fighting game, but you right now don't know shit, or you don't have a sense of anything on a fundamental basis. So everything to you is literally just this right here. It is blank. It is not existent at all. So you eventually move into training mode, look up some YouTube videos and stuff here and there. You start to like type down like, okay, what's the best like Ken combo here and there, blah blah blah, but you're not yet like going into frame data, understanding what neutral is and like spacing, and you're not going to be doing the most optimal frame perfect combos here and there. You're only finally like starting to like pick up the sticks and, you know, do a DP motion and figure out how to do that consistently in training mode. So you get something that's like this house right here that is not perfect. The lines are very rigid, but it is a house, right? There is a block that is the entire foundation, like the wall. Well, this is the foundation, the floor, but you know, the walls, the skeletal aspect of it, the walls, and let's pretend there's walls on the side, it's 3D. There's windows, and there's a door with a knob on it. This is a very simplistic form of a house, and it is something that you would only see in your own kindergarten drawings as a kid, or maybe even the first grade, but this is what you're working with right now. And honestly, like, it's still a house, so it can still do something. Like, it'll still keep you safe and cozy at night. But, you know, like, I'd say, like, if we were to give this a title or a range of where most players in 6 would be, let's call this the rookie all the way up to, like, silver range, to where, yeah, you may see a DP. Maybe you may see a random DP in the middle of the screen. You may see like people sweeping at each other and not knowing how to, you know, block low, things like that, right? But it works for them at their skill level to where they're at. That to them is like what the craziest level of Street Fighter that they've ever seen. And but eventually you decide, you discover something, not necessarily whether you decide to or not, but you maybe found like a gimmick that you can abuse that'll destroy all the random silvers, the irons, the new challengers, the rookies, and you use that to build something that's still rigid and stuff, but it is a house still. You give yourself a little roof. It's still rigid, but it's more than what it was previously, even if it is only by one step. And everything else still relatively is the same. But it's something that gets you up into like the gold ranks and stuff, and maybe even like the lower, well, maybe not platinum. And I know platinum players are much better than this, but you know, this is what you're working with now, and now you're ready to yet graduate even from this, and you're playing with a lot more intention to one day hopefully hit that master rank title. So then we work on a few things. We look at a bunch more videos. We start to look at our own favorite like top level players and YouTubers that maybe play your character, and you like watching their highlight videos, you watch their streams and shit, and you build something and you refine it more. I would say that from this point on to where everything is a lot more upright, it's straight across, it's a lot more secure, it's a lot more perfected, I should say. It's a lot more in order, but there's not really much depth to it yet. It's still a house with a roof with 2 windows and a door and a knob, but it's much sharper and stuff. I would call this the range to where like I say this is where you reach from platinum all the way to like diamond and stuff. And even from there, like, you know, you're still lacking a few things fundamentally, or like things like such as timing. Maybe a few anti-airs are not necessarily being checked on, so they're getting free jump-ins, things like that here and there. But you still have the tools. Like, you do know how to DP a jump-in. You do know that how to shoot fireballs and stuff. You know how to like do a basic drive rush combo. You do know how to cancel super in the, or special in the super, things like that, right? You have basic stuff, very basic stuff. Then you start to refine it a bit more, and you eventually hit either like the upper, like Diamond 5 or something. People don't stay in Diamond that long, but I do know that Diamond players they start to see things a bit more in depth, or that's where they start to develop one sense of like depth of like understanding of like not only their own characters, but like how the player actually, how their opponent actually thinks and stuff. But it's a very little like scope that they're able to see through. But it is enough, however, to get them all the way up to, let me see if it's in the correct order here, something like this. Maybe this is a huge leap, honestly, from this right here, but I couldn't find any better picture. And it is a house. It has a tree this time. It has a walkway to the door. It has everything you'd want, honestly. It's enough to get you into Master Rank and stuff. And I would say that this, if I were you to scale this also, let's say this is around like the 1,400 range, maybe even 1,300 range of players that finally get into like Master, but they still have the skills of a Diamond player with just a few extra steps that actually separates them from the Diamond players. Which, you know, don't take these pictures in at all too literal in comparison. The jump from this shitty drawing of mine to this is actually insane, so don't kill me for that. But from here on, this is where you start to decide whether or not you are okay here, or you want to take things even further into depth with. But not only that, this is where you start to come to like find your own like identity as a player, because like I mentioned, Street Fighter, let me close the game, I don't need this anymore. This is where like, you know, you start to see more of the game for like how it relates to you as the player and also your opponent, because there's only so far in depth you really get into like the frame data and like the actual mechanics of the game and stuff. Like, we know it's real easy to study up on, because they don't go as far into depth versus like a game like Tekken, to where you can almost infinitely learn so much about your own character, because they have so many more like commands and tools and stuff that you could spend a lot of time grinding out a single character and then move on to another, and it's already another book in itself. But each of the characters in this game are able to be fit in a single book with their own little chapters in between. Then that's the best way I can describe it. So eventually you get enough knowledge to know like what's punishable on like a certain character. Like maybe you know that Ken's standing heavy kick is like -5. You know that donkey kick is like -8, I believe. You know that certain like moves like DJ Sobat's -6, things like that. But you don't entirely know everything, but you know the basic standard stuff that's always in your face constantly, enough to be able to like play, you know, the game much more solid than those way before, like still trying to get into the master ranks and stuff. You will outplay them 9 times out of 10. But then we start to deviate, right, from this point into like more complex things, and you'll see more players like start to, you know, develop their own identity and stuff, even with the same characters that play. Like, I don't know many Kens that play like me. I don't know many I don't know many Lukes that play like Noah and like things like that, right? You can tell like who's playing based on not even the characters they play, but like how they play them. And then, you know, if we were to use a house, for example, some people develop into something like a cathedral of sorts. You know, let's just call this, like, for example, the player who likes to play more wild, aggressively and stuff. And then we got something, or actually, since it's old school, let's say this is the more not even that. Make it what you will. But then we have people that prefer to be more modern when it comes to houses, and they develop whole skyscrapers and shit. That things are a bit more like sharper and stuff, and more relevant to the day and age that we currently live in. But it's still, you know, defined, developed, and has depth to it in detail, and you know, it gets the job done, right? Or we have something that take things to a more like you know, a more maybe not old school, but not necessarily that old. Something that's more closer to where like this is and stuff. Still fundamentally the same, but has more to it and is much more ever so like cut like and refined and stuff. And you know, that at that point, this is where you start to deviate into your own self and take things further in whatever direction you so choose and stuff. And for me personally, I like to rely more on like the fundamental things. It's something I'm much better at, but there are times when chaos just happens, and then you have to kind of forget the plan of having everything controlled and stable, when there are times in especially 6 where shit just hits the fan and stuff because of things like perfect parry and DI and drive rush. Like, it happens at some point, so you want to have something that reflects the elements of the other areas that you might not be mainly focusing on, but to have something reflective of each thing can help you in the long run, because you want to have a tool for everything, even if they're not the best. And one things definitely have to be pushed further up than the other, but that's all entirely on who you are as a player, and you know what you so choose to be moving forward. And that's pretty much all I gotta say, honestly. It's a lot, to be honest with you. It's literally a never-ending process. And what's interesting to this game is since there's so many people like playing it around the world, and so many of the new faces are very young in competition. It's speaking loudly to me, because it's just showing that, you know, we're not all like limited by like even how we are. Like, there's something going on that most people are not seeing, that we haven't seen before, because like most of the time we're used to our major champions being like those that are much older than us, that those that come from way back in the day of like where, you know, whether 4 was happening or like people were still playing like Street Fighter 2 or Marvel vs. Capcom 2, things like that. You know, names and faces like Daigo, Justin Wong, players like Tokido have been around since back then too. Infiltration during that era, the 4 era at least, and a few other names too that's not clicking in my head for some reason. But as of now, we're seeing like that the competition can get even younger than that. Like, Blas is an example. I think Crime was it Pedro or Crime? Crime was like even younger than Blas. I think he's 13 and stuff. And I know someone even here, like in my own local region, who's like 16 or some shit. And he's like a fucking crazy ass Blanca player. Like, it's just like, it goes to show that there's a lot more to, like, I guess, one's experience too. It's very strange. I'm still trying to figure it out myself, but it's something I have to kind of look up on in my own time, because at that point, this is where I'm showing that there's still a lot more to learn on my end too, but maybe even yourself too, like, and hopefully, like, I can show y'all that this is like kind of the norm of like how progress happens and stuff, and that eventually, like, if you really do put in, like, at least a bit of effort, you eventually will move up from where you are now currently and stuff. And it's like this, like, I already gave y'all like my own like rundown on myself. Like, I honestly could have pushed things way faster, like, if I really kept other things out of my head and like really locked in. But I have more things going on that I'd rather put my time into, honestly. But for you guys out there, like, just know that given time and consistency, like, you can go as high as you want to go, man. Like, all you have to do is just trust in the process and stuff, which may be corny to say, because like it's something I feel like I hear people say all the time, so, but it's true. It's just a really true fact of life. Like, you just naturally have to, give in to the process and allow time to do its thing and put in your own effort to keep things like as consistent as they need to be. And eventually with time, you'll see yourself where you're aiming towards, and know that you can go even further beyond that. And that's something I believe everybody can do, and it's something I know that I can do. And I've done it more than once. Even before, like this little small thing here and there, like with the whole rank up to like Ultimate Master, it's not even the biggest thing on my list that I've kind of like done. It doesn't even compare. It's a hair, dude. Like, but as far as this field, like, I know this is the best way to get y'all to kind of understand. So that's all I got, pretty much. Anybody that has questions here and there, feel free to comment and stuff. I'll do the best I can to like help you guys out, and get back to y'all whenever I can, because even up till now, I'm checking out the time and I got stuff to do. So I'll be looking towards to seeing what people have to say. This is Infinite 47, and I'll be seeing y'all around. Peace.